I'm not a blob. I'm not a crop. I'm not a drop. I'm not a knob. I'm not a drop. I'm not a dropout. Stop, 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 prop. Stop the flop. Stop, blop, tank top, flip flop, flop hop. Hop to flop. I am top. I'm no drop. Stop, stop the pop. Top the flop. Top pop. Top job. Tough job. Pop pop. Flop pop. Dum dum. I'm not. Nope. Nope. Note. Not. Not a flop. Not a flop. I'm not. I'm not a flop. I'm not a flop. I'm not a flopper. I'm not a flopper. I said it. I'm not a flop. Even if that's what they want me to be, really. And that's precisely what I came to talk about today here. I know about flops. You know, I've had my fair share of them, actually. I'm even kind of an expert, you know, when it comes down to it. Shim Sham Shimmy, you know, or the shrimp on the Barbie, or block-sucking pharaohs in Pittsburgh. You know, they're time fillers. But you know what? That doesn't make me a failure. If success, as Josh Scanlan puts it, is based more on circulation than in recognition, you know, I've certainly made it. You know, you all know me. You know, you've all you all saw my movies on TV probably. But maybe you've never noticed my name in the credits, which is okay. You know, maybe I think that sometimes there's not enough time given to credits, or sometimes I think that maybe there's too many people credited within the credits, which discredits the whole thing. My name is not important. You know, my name is it is Alan Smithee. It's my name, but it's also a made-up name. And you know, actually, if you're a little bit clever and you rearrange the letters, it will spell out the alias man. What is it to be like? What is it to be an alias? I'm going to tell you. Good evening. Welcome. Before I begin, I would like to thank Daniela and Francesca and Boris and Philip and everyone really here at the TBA for making my appearance here possible today. Thank you. You know, when Mario García Torres, you know, the artist, first started to talk to me about this idea, I must admit, you know, I'm not even sure how many of my films has Mario really seen. And, you know, actually when he started to talk to me, you know, even though, you know, he didn't really even mention my films, which, you know, when people come, that's what they want to know. And, you know, in fact, actually Mario's instructions were pretty vague. And you know, so after giving it some thoughts and, you know, now I think that maybe he was, you know, trying to set up some kind of ploy, you know, maybe some kind of situation to see what happened. Maybe he was trying to set up a situation to see what happened. And but actually, while we discussed this presentation, Mario had actually a few points, and he can convince me of a couple, but actually most of the time we completely disagree with each other. So let's make it clear that this is, I'm not here as a frontman for Mr. García Torres. This is going to be my personal take on it. Okay, I should probably try to properly introduce myself. As I mentioned before, I am a filmmaker. I make films. I am known as Alan Smithee, sometimes also Alan with an L-A-N, sometimes Adam. Smithee is S-M-I-T-H-E-E. And but my name is not important. I mean, it's only important insofar as it gathers a certain group of works. Actually, sometimes I think I might actually be somebody else. Maybe I'm not a guy. Sometimes I think I'm a woman, or maybe I'm a collectivity, or sometimes I think I could have been a Walter Plinch, or a Georgina Spelving, or a Prokopolis, Paul Prokopolis, the pianist. That day, I was thinking that day he, but anyway, he's an amazing story, but I'll tell you that day later, I don't think I should get sidetracked here so early. Smithee is a pseudonym. Okay, I just want to lay it down flat. Sometimes I like to say it though. To be perfectly clear, I am the name that film directors take whenever they want to withdraw their names from a film that they've made and they feel embarrassed about. They've, for whatever reason, shame comes up a lot. If you're a film director and you're discontent with the film you made, you go to the Directors Guild of America, and if you make a case and you convince them, they will take out your name and put mine in its place, Alan Smithee. Alan Smithee has made 77 films until today, which is, it's complex and it's remarkable, for a number of reasons. But today, more than looking at each one of my films, I'm more interested in the whole phenomenon. The phenomenon as a productive act. The production as a whole, as a creative act, a spontaneous, surefire, creative act. Is it possible that the awareness of dishonor can become a creative act? Is it possible that the awareness of dishonor can become a creative act? I think it can. Because, I'm the product of it, not my films, me. Their shame produces Smithee. And but I'm just an idea, okay? I'm just an idea. I'm the data phase of the corporation. I'm their most avant-garde creation today, actually. It's a strange but revealing fact that sometimes the avant-garde is more avant-garde than the avant-garde. You know, I'm an idea that was invented by a small group of intellectual geniuses. You know, probably you can just call them lawyers. But then I'm taken by a really heterogeneous group of artists and pranksters, you know, and it has to do with the idea of the auteur in cinema. It has to do with the idea of the auteur in cinema. But in my case, you know, actually I have my own ideas about this, and but I'll try to get to them in a moment. I've been around since 1969, and yes, I need to probably define myself before I get carried away. You know, I am a text. I am a script. I'm not a person. And essentially, I'm the story written by the mistaken outcome of life. You know, I know that this is an artist's work, and I should probably talk about that. When in truth, you know, I don't get that many invitations like these because, you know, they know that, you know, the guy who might show up actually might not actually be me. You know, by this time, you know, I'm being played by a performer. His name is also Mario García Torres, and he works in Mexico City, and he does some kind of art activity. Well, in fact, I think that he pretends to write scripts, or I guess that's what he's mostly known for, I think. Or what I mean about that is that you know, sometimes he stands in. You know, sometimes he puts a face to a name, and I'm sure that when he you know, read this script, he thought, you know, maybe actually I can become Alan Smithee. And apart from the age thing and the accent, maybe the way he's dressed, I think he's doing okay. Okay, you know what? Actually, there was this story that you might find this interesting. You know, there was actually one guy who tried to impersonate me. I mean, you know, before, not now, before somebody actually in the industry. You know, in the entertainment industry. You know, he thought it'll be a good way to jump ahead, to get ahead. You know, to jump in my bandwagon. You know, after everything that I've done, you know, or done for others, really, to pretend, you know, to be me, for instance, a self-ready-made man, and but anyway, maybe I should start talking about my persona. I'm not invited to do this here anyway. At the same time, though, this is kind of, you know, the only chance that I'm going to have, though, you know, to defend what I've done, you know, what I've done for the last few decades, and you know, I want to make success out of disenchantment. I want to make success out of disenchantment. But look, I'm not perfect, okay? My arguments might have holes. But at least I'm honest. You know, this is what I am. This is what I could become. You know, please bear with me for a second. Let me just check my notes here. You know, there's tons of anecdotes actually that you might find actually you might be interested to listen to. Actually, did you know, for example, that the first time that my name was actually ever spoken was not at that Directors Guild of America lawyer meeting room, but it was in a film. It's in a film called Mr. Arcading. It's also known as Confidential Report. It's by Orson Welles. It's from 1955. And through the title character, Mr. Arcading, and I'm linked actually to the enigma of origins and the failure of memory and a great criminal conspiracy. When Mr. Arcading, the mysterious tycoon feigns amnesia in the film, this other character, his counterpart, wonders whether Mr. Arcading is not Mr. Arcading, but somebody named Smithee. And Mr. Arcading is also the title actually of a novel, supposedly written by Wells, but as he came out, he didn't write a single word of it. So and of course the movie's a mess because he the studio cut it without his input, and so what you have is a mutilated film that goes written book and the story of a fake amnesiac. In other words, a real Alan Smithee production. And actually a good case could be made that, Smithee and Wells, belong together. They're natural bedfellows. Take the last real cinematic performance by Wells, as the voice of the Planet Evil robot in Transformers, the movie, the original one, the black and white, not the Michael Bay monstrosity, but the original. That certainly should have been a Smithee. But anyway, maybe I should leave that for a second lecture. I don't want this. Actually, everyone expects mediocrity from me, and I hate to disappoint. It's almost as bad as saying no. It's like. Mediocrity knows nothing better than itself. What else can you ask for when you trust yourself? Even if others think that it is not enough. Would talent make you a better person? If you manage to finish a film. More than one here will agree with me. It's a huge personal success, regardless of public perception. But anyway, mediocrity is something I should have prepared for probably, but it totally slipped my mind. It wasn't always like that, okay? Not everything that I've made is or was bad, or more and more, I think that those things that were perceived as bad, they aren't. Look at the first film I made. As I said, my first movie was released in 1969, and it was all very, very serious back then. It was a cowboy story. And it actually got some good critical notices, sharply directed by Alan Smithee, who has an adroit facility for scanning faces and drawing background detail. And, that's not such a compliment, but it was the New York Times, and of course I learned it when it came out, let me read it this way. Smith's direction keeps the action taut and draws convincing portrayals from the supporting cast. And that's variety. And, of course, I like to read my reviews, after all, they are, the best proof of my existence. And this is just the beginning, actually. For you guys, there's my bibliography is actually not that bad. There's actually quite a kind of decent academic book about my work. It's actually by the University of Minnesota Press, and I mean not that everything that they say there is I agree with, but actually. Well, the book it's a collection of essays by by a group of intellectuals, and at first they define my work as throwaways, which I can cope with. But then they start saying that the history of Hollywood cinema can be studied through them, which I don't know. To be honest, I find it a little intellectual, a little academic, But see, a couple of decades later, I made some films that came before. A couple of decades later, I made some films that came before. I mean, how to explain it? It was already the 1980s when I realized that I had made some films before 1969. When my first film came out. And some might say that was a little bit out of sync with the production of the time. Actually, one day I realized that I had made some films that actually came before. Some earlier films actually. If you have followed me, you must realize this too. That's how it works for me, Actually, once, one day, somebody they withdrew a film from my filmography, which felt strange. But then years later, they brought it back, and it was kind of strange feeling. But you get used to it, And but lately, I discovered that I made a promotional film for housing development, something I've never done before, and a short story actually set in London, and they've become now my earliest films, and they're from 1965 and 1955 retrospectively, and they are, as most of them, forgettable. One actually, but there's one very dear to me actually. It's a film released in 1968 now. So it's a love story that happens between a editor and an extra that are working on a film, and some people have written that that I'm portraying something specific, and but I don't see it that way, I mean, I'm not in the business of making cinema about cinema. I am in the business of making sure that every film has a director. And, actually, you might know this, but talking about cinema, this year I got a new film attributed to me. I'm really curious about it. It's a they say it's a film, one of those films, where they interview everybody in the industry, it's supposed to be a kind of documentary where you learn how to produce and cut and promote your film. It's it's titled $1 Billion Weekend, and it's in post-production right now. Can't wait to see it. And then, what can I say? In the last few years, actually, I've been making my trips to the Valley in LA. Of course, those guys are wise, you know. They figure out I have a great background, you know. What can I say? It's not a joke. I mean, I've made a few porn now, but that's certainly not the best thing that a pseudonym can do. And I mean, you know, look at poor Georgina Spelving. You know, she had become quite a career in the sneaker business of becoming a nobody. You know, which she actually played quite smoothly. And you know, Georgina, she was an alias for an actor who didn't want to whose real name to be known, or who played a part that was so small that credit was an embarrassment. Then they will put Georgina Spelving, and but then in 1973 she became a porn actress that actually epitomized the era of porn chic, and you know, there she goes, Georgina, and I mean, she was almost imperceptible in the theater scene, you know, really a really very discreet job, you know, but she played a fundamental role, you know, and everyone in the theater scene they loved her, you know, like you know, producers, directors, stage people, and you know, everybody talked about her, you know, but then. But that's another long story. Let me just tell you that if this is all misleading to you, this is also misleading to me. It's kind of confusing, but then again, I might be able to come up with an argument that makes sense in the most square way. You know, in the end, my life is like a film, where time is experienced linearly, but it's actually spliced together from multiple currents. And I mean, what is time anyway, right? It's just a fundamental intellectual structure, right? I mean, it's not that as if events just happen and that's that. You know, time is an invention. It's an arbitrary, indefinitive, continued progress of existence, which, you know, sometimes it gets crumpled and reversed and, you know, crushed, and more so in my films. Sometimes actually strange things happen to the stories that I tell. Oh yeah, it's kind of like that story by Wittgenstein. You know this the story that it says that there's this guy who leaves his house and goes to the corner and buys a copy of a paper, goes back in his house, and then suddenly right after he comes out again and gets another copy of the newspaper, and then he goes back again. And then little after he goes out again and gets a new copy of the paper, and then he goes back in, and then 10 minutes later he comes out and goes to the corner, buys the same copy of the newspaper, and he goes back in. Why? You know, just to see if nothing happened meanwhile. And I don't know, maybe Wittgenstein had something else more important to say, but see, I've learned to be very tolerant with time. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. You know, sometimes my films are just that, time. You know, they're there to make time pass. You know, to create a consistency of progress. You know, mostly through the night. Actually, maybe one day I will retitle all my films with their length instead. You know, a lot of the times it doesn't really matter what they're about, as long as they fill a specific time span. You know, I never thought I would make it to Europe. For example, I was only aware of that cowboy movie I was telling you about more than 10 years after the fact. I mean, I was supposedly born in 1969, but now my earliest film is from 55. 1955. You know, it's kind of interesting actually, because that's the same year where the Orson Welles film came out, and you know, that's it's really a key moment in my career, because that's precisely when the past and present coincide. And am I becoming too much of a Smithee here? Sorry, you know, it gets kind of confusing here with the microphone. You certainly have a kind of different perception of time up here. I don't know how long has passed. Am I boring you? You know, more and more I think that, you know, this time hopping might be surprising, but actually I think it's okay. You know, I think it's great. You know, this is how actually my filmography is built. You know, as I was just explaining, you know, I mean, why do we expect artists to create chronologically all the time? I mean, wouldn't it be great if artists created works for different years all the time? You know, for me, if you want to picture it that way, you know, the body of my work is like an automatic sculpture. You know, where you never know where is, you know, gonna jot out next, and you know, not even me. And you know, isn't that a possible future of invention? You know, I think it's way more interesting than just trying to create a logical progress. You know, trying to make sense as if life was just a steady and monotonous onward movement. You know, trying to make sense all the time. What was his name? Costa. You know Costa? Costa. They were telling me about this last night. They were telling me about this amazing story about Costa. Eduardo Costa. He's an Argentinian artist. He has a piece where it's actually the piece is the title of the piece, and it's something like, I'm going to read it to you. It's something like a piece that is essentially the same as a piece made by any of the first conceptual artists dated 2 years earlier than the original and signed by somebody else. A piece that is essentially the same as a piece made by any of the first conceptual artists, dated 2 years earlier than the original and signed by somebody else. Of course, that's from 1970. And you know what Costa proposes is a reappraisal, but not of the different artists, you know, as you know, or as they like to do over in the art world, but of a specific work under different names. You know, he just wants to change the authorship. And please note the date of creation. And you know, he wants to affect the redistribution of the historical record, you know, an anachronism. And you know, if you ask me, you know, I feel very much identified by that, because you know, some of my films at some point belong to others. And I mean, isn't the meaning of two identical works totally different if they belong to two different artists? You know, my works exist, then they briefly stop existing when the first author discredits them, and then they start existing again when they're attributed to me. You know, they are the same work. You know, they are the same film, but they can be read under a whole different light. And see, I'm a filmmaker, but I don't do films. You know, you know, they are slowly incorporated into my body of work. You know, I don't do films. I do filmography. I mean, there are plenty of films out there. You know, why would I wish to add more? Right? You know, sometimes or most of the time, I really feel like you know, the content of my films is not important. You know, it's what is relevant is that I made them, and or the fact that they are now mine. You know, they belong to my filmography, and you know, they're actually legitimate because of me, and I exist because of them. You know, at the same time, I'm just, you know, I don't know, a dustbin of creative work, you know, an unlikely collection of leftovers, you know, of artistic rubbish, you know. But, you know, at the same time, you can really make it as a garbage collector today. Personally, I've never met a piece of film that I didn't like. What can I say? Maybe I'm just a foster home, you know, for shelter for unclaimed projects. You know, a non-author as the organization principle for a disjoint body of work. And of course, like I said, I don't exist, you know. But then again, here I am, and my films are the proof of it, you know. And I mean, you know, I'm words. I mean, the art world, I was told, is really invested in words, and I'm words. And maybe that's why whoever wrote this text thought it was a good idea to have it presented by some kind of performer, or to present the performer becoming Smithee. Actually, you might know that this text was actually presented before. It was delivered for the first time. It was delivered 9 years ago. It was in London, and then it was not too long ago that the artist wanted to experiment and see if the issues discussed here could have a larger reach. So he edited the script and slightly, and deliberately proposed to have it delivered here inside a wider framework set up by the organizers, which in this case, I don't know, maybe the artist thought, Smithee the character can also become just a form. So I'm an excuse. I'm an exempt. I'm a free form. To talk about other issues, or I guess that's the big challenge. How to use my situation and my issues to turn them into thoughts, maybe. But anyway, I won't get you bored with technicalities. It's not important to buy time getting off the script. Please just forgive what I just said. At the end, that my opinions do not necessarily represent those of the presenters anyway. If any, I won't make this much longer, okay? It's just that these kind of invitations, make me exist. Even if it's for 40 minutes, or sometimes I try to prolong it. I mean, what is existence anyway, right? When they invited me here, actually, I started to do a little research, and I discovered the story of Christopher Di Arcangelo. He's a fantastic artist also, and he actually wanted to disappear, to leave no trace, to leave the stage. But to do it in a meaningful way, and I was told, for example, that in 1979 he withdrew his name from any print about the show, and so when the exhibition was communicated, he only appeared as a blank. And sometimes I think I could have. But when I think of the real motivations of the lawyers who invented Smithee, I think that I'm the product of a way more devious and complicated plot, than just cashing in the author theory, I mean, what were those guys thinking when they invented Smithee? Actually, during the rehearsals here, I actually came to a funny conclusion. When they created Alan Smithee, I think they were thinking about a very powerful thing. They were not thinking of an artist like the writers of this script seem to think, but they were. They were thinking about way much more potent and ghostly entity. Actually, I think they were thinking about Adam Smith. You know Adam Smith, the you know the economist philosopher from the 18th century. You know, and not just about him, but his invisible hand theory. You know, some device that you know, that can turn, you know, a spontaneous product in a spontaneous film into a decent product. You know, an aborted film that can turn into something else. You know, that can be marketable. You know, it's Smithee as an invisible hand. You know, not that I believe in that, but I think that's really what they saw. You know, Smithee as an unseen power that can turn anything into a productable product, and maybe maybe this is just, you know, midlife paranoia. But then let it be. You know, that's precisely where I came. You know, where I came to be. You know, an invisible eye that can turn certain unforeseen actions into a creative order. You know, not for the good of the market, because that never really happened, but into a new paradigm. You know, a new paradigm for film production. You know, this. You know, maybe this might sound extravagant, but I think it's really telling. You know, that's you know how economic theories can actually become a creative force. You know, behind avant-garde creations. Oh, look at me. Just repeating myself again. You know, sometimes when I start to believe in my own self-ready-madeness, I start to believe what I'm saying. You know, I can become a little egocentric, and but you know, in the end, I'm just, you know, I'm just an artist. You know, that happens to be, you know, because of an innumerable number of reasons. And at the same time, let's be honest. I'm just a ready-made artist. Not just because my name is in loan to other artists, but because the works that I made, they were already made. And this might sound trivial, but I think it's not. Again, I don't do works. You know, they get done, and then they're attributed to me at some point. You know, and most of them are unsuccessful in the most banal sense of the term, but they're interesting nonetheless. You know, I'm not an artist who goes around, you know, like blindly picking up objects and calling them his or her art. You know, you know, I'm the verbatim of an illustration of an autonomous process. You know, at least for me, you know, that is fed by another force, by an unseen force, and but then you know, I'm what can I say? A self-ready-made artist. You know, a found failure. But what I like about this actually is that my films stop being films and instead they become a list. You know, a list that actually argues about, you know, an artist's practice or a bibliography that documents an artist's thought. But I don't know, maybe that sounds strange, and you don't have to believe in everything that I just said. Maybe I sometimes, or lately, I just spend too much time with myself, just arguing, you know, how how am I a non-productive process, you know. Are you able to make any sense of what I'm saying? You know, in case you think that this whole ready-made artist thing is unsustainable, you know, at least that's fine. You know, at least you can believe that I am. You know, one of my best achievements is to be invisible. You know, a creative force that is unseen. I can cope with that. You know, an unseen creative force in the worst case scenario. You know, concretely, I came here to ask you whether all those things that people don't want to sign and can exist as somebody else's work, even if they are viewed as a string of failures. Okay, I'm here to try to convince you that to look at a certain long list of these own films as someone's creative practice. Like I said before, I don't exist. And I'm happy about that, and you know, I'm not supposed to matter, but I'm happy to be the moniker of some sort of spontaneous order, you know. You know, actually, that this it's to tell you the truth, is the only convincing conclusion that I was able to come out with. Actually. Lately, I spend a lot of my nights just, you know, reading this scientific stuff, and it's in those kind of texts that I happen to find some of my conclusions. Actually, you know, for example, you know about spontaneous order. Spontaneous order is also a social theory that describes the emergence of various kinds of orders created from the combined acts of self-interested individuals who are not intentionally trying to create order. And I think that's precisely what I came to be. You know, even if my filmography grows in a chaotic way, and my career it's publicly, you know, my career is publicly perceived as an organized production, and you know, it's the other's disinterest that creates my work. It's the other filmmaker's shame that produces Smithee. You know, the truth is that there's a danger of me to disappear. Lately, it seems that, you know, at some time, some decades ago, I was a secret, and later I was a kind of phenomenon which people was very interested in and wanted to talk about. But in the last years, I had less and less films attributed to me. And I fear I'm just going to die, you know, to be forgotten, and after everything that I've done, and you know, I thought maybe the art world can give me a last thought, you know, Um, I don't know. You know, I have a hard time saying no, and that's why I accepted to come here. You know, and after some long, almost abstract conversations with myself, trying to figure it out, it occurred to me that maybe what they wanted is they wanted me to talk about failure, and of course I know something about that, but it's, you know, beyond my knowledge and my expertise to try to pretend and give a lecture about failure. And you know, the only thing I will say is that you know, without failure is impossible to conceive the last 2 centuries of our history. You know, where would we be, you know, without breakdown and collapse and disjunction? You know, it's been a smashing success, hasn't it? You know, better a productive failure than a non-productive success. You know, that's my motto. You know, and it's there to be taken, actually. You know, and a non-productive success occurs when something goes right, but nobody knows why or how. Whereas a non-productive failure, you know, it leads to insights and, you know, understanding, and that's an addition to the commonly held wisdom of mankind. And but maybe this is as close as I will ever get to do a keynote lecture, because that's okay. You know, I've been repeating the same mistakes in life for a long time, and I'll start calling them. You know, at the same time, you know, sometimes I think that the best way to make it through today is through spectacular failure. You know, to make a success out of a fleeting pause between 2 exquisitely crafted downturns. You know, at the end, I just happened to be an accidental artist, and I wish that from that point of view, the body of work that I've been developing since the late 1960s stopped being overlooked. Even if I don't exist, or even if my work seems as a bit incoherent, but anyway, maybe I should just leave it there. Then again, I hope I wasn't too egocentric. I wish I could really separate my life with my work, but then, you know, as it happens, it's quite difficult. And you know, my work could only be understood through my bumpy journey through the world. And see, I'm not much of a speaker or an actor, for that matter. At this stage, I might be just, you know, shooting from the hip or lip syncing my own words. Thank you.